the Cartographer of Silent Dreams. In a quiet room at the top of a lonely gray stone tower lived Kael, the cartographer. His work was not with the shifting lands and seas of the waking world, but with the landscapes of the sleeping mind. He did not map coastlines or continents, he mapped dreams. His workshop was round, with a high domed ceiling across which a slow, silent constellation of silver lights drifted in a constant soothing dance. The air was always cool and smelled of old wood, dried herbs, and the faint, clean scent of ozone that clung to his tools. It was a scent of deep peace and quiet purpose. There was one curved window, looking out not upon any land, but into a soft, endless bank of twilight-colored clouds. No one ever visited, and he never left. His work was here. In the center of the room stood his mapping table. It was not made of wood, but was a single, large, circular slab of obsidian, polished so smooth and so deep it seemed to hold the darkness of the night sky within it. This was his dreamstone. It was cool to the touch, and when the room was silent, one could almost hear a faint, low hum resonating from its depths. This stone was his canvas, his window, and his guide. Kael's life moved to a gentle, quiet rhythm, a tide of waking and dreaming, of listening and recording. Kael himself was as quiet and unassuming as his workshop. He wore soft gray robes that made no sound as he moved. His hands, though, were remarkable. They were long and graceful, his fingers sensitive to the slightest vibration, the faintest shift in temperature. They were the hands of a musician or a sculptor, but they worked in a medium far more delicate than stone or sound. His evenings always began the same way. As the silver lights on his ceiling began to glow a little brighter, signaling the deepening of night in the world below, he would begin his preparations. He would light a single, thick candle made of dark violet wax, which gave off no smoke, only a soft, steady light and a faint scent of lavender and night air that helped to focus his mind. Then he would prepare his inks. They were not inks of squid or berry, but of captured sensation. He had small, crystalline bowls on a low wooden shelf. Into one, he would pour a fine, shimmering powder of ground moonlight, used to draw lines of quiet joy or gentle surprise. Into another, he placed a single drop of liquid twilight, a deep indigo fluid used to map feelings of peaceful melancholy. For lines of pure peace, he used a soft, silvery dust gathered from the wings of sleeping moths. His work was a kind of alchemy, turning light and feeling into form. Tonight, he felt a familiar kind of dream calling to him from the sleeping world. It was a common dream, a pleasant one, and a good place to begin his work. He approached the dreamstone, his bare feet silent on the cool wooden floor. He took a deep, slow breath, clearing his mind of his own thoughts, making himself a quiet vessel ready to receive the faint signals from afar. He placed his hands flat on the stone surface. It was cool, almost cold, but not unpleasantly so. It felt like dipping his hands into a still peep mountain lake. He closed his eyes and listened, not with his ears, but with his skin, with the sensitive pads of his fingertips, which could feel the texture of a dream. At first, there was nothing but the stone's faint deep hum. Then, a new vibration began, a gentle rising thrum. A faint pattern of light, like heat haze, shimmered across the obsidian surface. The stone was connecting, finding a dream that was strong and clear enough to be mapped. Kael's breathing was slow and even. He did not seek or guide the connection. He simply allowed it to form. A soft blue-white light began to glow under his palms, and he knew the window was open. He lifted his hands from the stone. The blue-white light remained, swirling on the surface like cream in dark coffee, before coalescing into a single, soft point of light in the center of the stone. This was his starting point, the anchor of the dreamer's consciousness. Now the landscape of the dream would unfold around it. He watched, his face calm and focused in the candlelight. The light on the stone began to expand, to trace faint silvery lines across the black surface. A world was appearing. It was a world of soft, rounded, cloud-like mountains and deep, misty valleys. There were no sharp edges, no hard surfaces. Everything was gentle, soft, and indistinct, as if sculpted from fog. Kael recognized this terrain immediately. It was the landscape of a flying dream. The dreamer was soaring, gliding on unfelt currents of air, feeling a sense of effortless freedom and exhilaration. Kael could feel the echo of that emotion through the stone, a light, joyful fluttering in his own chest. He reached for his bowl of powdered moonlight. He would need it to capture the trails of pure joy the dreamer left behind on their journey. He took a pinch of the shimmering moonlight powder. It was cool and weightless in his fingers, like holding a fragment of a moonbeam. He leaned over the dream stone and let the powder fall gently from his hand onto the surface. It did not scatter. Instead, it was caught by the energies of the dream, drawn into thin, shimmering lines that followed the dreamer's invisible path through the cloudy canyons. Where the dreamer's joy was most intense, a sudden happy swoop towards the ground, a graceful climb toward the phantom sun. The lines of moonlight powder glowed brighter. Kael worked with a quiet, focused grace, his hand moving in a slow, smooth dance over the stone, tracing the emotional topography of the flight. This was his craft, to give form to the formless. A map of this dream would not show altitude or direction in the waking sense. It would show the flow of feeling, the geography of emotion. Another cartographer might mark a mountain peak. Kael would mark a peak of pure exhilaration, a valley of gentle floating peace. He was not just mapping a place. He was mapping an experience. He worked for what felt like hours, though time in his workshop was as fluid as the dreams he mapped. The dream flight was a long and peaceful one. The dreamer explored the soft, cloud-like landscapes with a sense of pure, childlike wonder, their spirit unburdened by weight or worry. Kael's map grew more intricate, a beautiful network of silvery, joyful lines against the deep black of the stone. He added other textures for the moments of profound, peaceful stillness, where the dreamer simply hung suspended in the misty air. He used the silvery dust from the moth wings. It created soft, diffuse patches of light on the map, like pools of calm in a flowing river. The map became a living thing, a record not just of movement, but of the very quality of the dreamer's quiet, sweeping soul. He felt a deep sense of connection to this anonymous dreamer. He did not know who they were, but for this brief time, he was a companion on their journey, a silent witness to their private joy. It was an intimate and sacred trust, and he treated it with the utmost respect. He was not an intruder, but a gentle guest. Eventually, he felt the dream begin to change. The joyful, soaring motions became slower, more gentle. The dreamer was descending, the flight coming to its natural, peaceful end. The echoes of exhilaration faded, replaced by a soft, warm feeling of contentment and deep relaxation. The dreamer was nearing the edge of waking, or perhaps sinking deeper into a more formless, dreamless sleep. The bright, silvery lines on the map began to soften, their glow fading. The landscape of cloud mountains grew indistinct, melting back into the swirling, blue-white mist from which it had been born. Kael watched, his hands resting at his sides. His work was almost done. He would not map the waking world, nor the deep, formless sleep.
He only mapped the beautiful journey between those two shores. He took a soft cloth made of dark velvet and gently, with a circular motion, he began to polish the edges of the map. This was a gesture of closing, of sealing the dream's edges to keep its essence from dissipating too quickly. It was a quiet, respectful farewell to the world he had been visiting. The last of the dream's light faded from the stone, leaving only Kael's beautiful, shimmering map behind. It glowed with a soft, residual energy, a silent testament to the journey that had taken place. He stood for a moment, simply appreciating it, a finished piece of ephemeral art that would never be seen by any eyes but his own. Each map was unique, a fingerprint of a single, unrepeatable experience. He never tried to preserve them. The Dreamstone was not an archive. It was a canvas that must be wiped clean for the next masterpiece. The value for Kael was not in the record, but in the act of recording, in the moment of connection and understanding that he shared with the dreamer. With a soft sigh of contentment, he took a larger velvet cloth. He paused for one last look at the beautiful chart of a stranger's joy. Then he began to wipe the stone clean. The moonlight powder and moth dust came away easily, dissolving into nothingness. The deep, black, silent surface of the stone returned, cool and patient, ready for the next dream.
He cleaned his crystalline bowls with practiced, gentle motions, the faint scent of lavender from his candle filling the quiet air. He felt the familiar sense of peaceful satisfaction that always followed the completion of a map. It was a quiet, subtle feeling, but it was the anchor of his solitary life, the reward for his unique and silent work. He went to the curved window and looked out. The clouds were still there, an endless, soft landscape of purple and gray. He sometimes wondered what lay beyond them, but the thought was a fleeting one, a question without the need for an answer. His world was this room, this tower, this quiet craft. For him, it was enough. Tonight, however, as he stood by the window, he felt something different. A new vibration in the air, a new hum resonating up through the stone floor of the tower. It was not the call of a single human dreamer. This was something else. It was older, deeper, and vaster. It felt like the resonant hum of the dreamstone itself, but amplified, as if the stone were a tuning fork struck by a distant, powerful hand. A sense of gentle curiosity, a feeling he had not experienced in a long time, stirred within him. His work was usually a predictable rhythm of familiar dreams. Dreams of flying, dreams of being late, dreams of finding lost things. They were the common, shared stories of the human heart. But this new feeling was strange, alien, and yet not frightening. It was profoundly peaceful, but vast, like the stillness of a deep ocean or the patience of a mountain. He turned from the window and looked at the dreamstone. Its surface was no longer a perfect placid black. A single faint line of deep emerald green light was now glowing in its center, a color he had never seen before. It was not a color from his crystalline bowls. It was a color emanating from the stone itself, a communication from a different kind of dreamer. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that this was not the dream of a person. This was the dream of a thing, a very old, very slow thing. He felt the call of a consciousness that measured time in seasons and centuries. Perhaps it was the dream of a mountain, a forest, or the sea. To map such a dream would require different tools. The simple inks of moonlight and twilight would not be enough to capture the textures of such an ancient consciousness. He went to a small, dark, wooden chest in the corner of his workshop, a chest he had not opened in many cycles. The hinges sighed softly as he lifted the heavy lid. Inside, nestled on beds of dark velvet, were his other inks. These were rarer, more potent. There was a phial containing a single preserved ray of the first dawn, a liquid of pure golden potential. There was a small stone box filled with the powdered silence from the heart of the desert,
used for mapping immense patient stillness. And there was his most precious tool, a small, hollow sphere of spun glass, and inside it, a single captive echo. An echo of the first word ever spoken. He did not know what he would need. He took the whole chest and placed it on a low stool beside the drainstone. He felt like a musician preparing to play a new and complex piece of music, his familiar instruments suddenly feeling inadequate for the beautiful challenge ahead.
He approached the dreamstone again. The line of emerald light was brighter now, and it had begun to branch out, like a river delta or the delicate veins of a leaf. It was beautiful, organic, and complex. He felt a deep, slow, and ancient peace emanating from it, a peace that seemed to carry the weight of seasons, of centuries. This was the dream of a forest. He placed his hands on the stone, away from the glowing lines. The surface was warmer than before, and the vibration was stronger, a slow, deep geologic pulse. He closed his eyes and let his consciousness sink into the stone, following the green lines, journeying into the dream. The world that opened to his senses was overwhelming. He felt the slow, patient thirst of roots burrowing deep into dark, cool earth. He felt the gentle caress of 1,000 summer's breezes on 1,000,000 different leaves. He smelled the rich, damp scent of moss growing on ancient bark, a scent that seemed to contain the memory of every rainfall that had ever been. It was a consciousness that operated on a scale of time he could barely comprehend, and he felt his own brief lifespan in stark, humbling contrast. He lifted his hands, his own heart beating in time with the slow ancient pulse. His mind felt full, brimming with the immense, quiet life of the forest. To map this, he would need to capture not just a single feeling, but a whole ecosystem of sensation, a layered and interconnected world of being. He began with the roots. He needed to draw their deep, patient strength, the foundation of the entire forest. He opened the stone box of powdered desert silence. He took a pinch of the fine, gray dust and let it fall near the base of the branching green lines. The dust settled into thick, dark, grounding shapes, anchoring the map to the bottom of the stone, giving it a sense of weight and depth. He could almost feel a cool, dark earth in those lines. Next, the slow, upward movement of life through the trunks. For this, he used special ink he made from the sap of its sleepy willow tree, mixed with a drop of rainwater. It created lines that were not sharp, but soft and slightly blurred, conveying a sense of slow, persistent, upward growth. He drew the great, silent trunks, the pillars of the forest dream. The map was taking shape, but it was still just a skeleton. The true essence of the forest dream was in its leaves, its canopy. This was where the forest met the sky, where it breathed, where it felt the sun and the moon. He needed a way to map the sound of the wind in the leaves, the feeling of dappled sunlight filtering through the branches. He opened the file containing the ray of the first dawn. It is a thick, golden liquid that seemed to move with a life of its own. He did not pour it. He simply uncorked the file and held it over the map. A single perfect golden droplet fell onto the stone, and where it landed, it burst into 1,000 tiny shimmery points of light, a miniature constellation that spread across the upper branches of his drawing. Each point of light was a memory of sunlight. Each one shimmered with a gentle warmth. He had captured the feeling of 1,000 sunny afternoons in a single golden drop. He smiled, a rare,
and gentle expression. The map was beginning to breathe.
Now for the whispers. The forest dream was full of them. The rustle of leaves was not just a sound, it was a language. It was the whisper of forgotten names, of secrets kept by the ancient trees for centuries. To map this, he needed something that could hold a sound, a memory of a voice. He looked at the spun glass sphere, the captive echo. This was the most delicate part of the process. He held the sphere over the map of the canopy. He concentrated, focusing on the feeling of those whispers in the dream. He let a tiny fragment of the echo out of the sphere. It was not a sound he could hear in his workshop, but a tracery of silent sound waves that appeared on the map, weaving between the golden points of sunlight like a silvery mist. The map was now a symphony of sensation. The deep, silent strength of the roots, the slow, persistent life of the trunks, the warm memory of sunlight, and the secret, silvery whispers of the leaves. He had created a chart not of a place, but of a living, breathing, dreaming soul. He worked through the night, his focus absolute. The forest dream was vast and complex, and he explored its every corner from the quiet sanctuary of his workshop. He mapped the cool, damp hollows where ferns dreamed of being unfurled in the spring. He charted the high, exposed branches where lonely sentinel trees dreamed of storms they had weathered 100 years ago. He even found a small, quiet clearing where a circle of mushrooms dreamed a collective, interconnected dream of the mycelial network beneath the earth, a silent underground city. Each new discovery required a different touch, a different medium. He used the dust of crushed river pearls to show the path of a stream that flowed through the dream, its water tasting of minerals and deep time. He used the pigment from a fossilized flower to add a hint of ancient, long-forgotten color to a hidden glade. His collection of rare inks, so long left untouched, was being put to use. The workshop was filled with the faint, strange, beautiful sense of his craft. The air itself seemed to shimmer with the power of the ancient dream he was channeling through the stone. As the first faint hint of morning approached in the world outside, he felt the connection to the forest dream begin to fade. Its ancient, slow consciousness was retreating, its attention turning from its own inner world to the sensations of the coming day. The first birdsong, the change in the light, the dew on its leaves. The dream was making way for the waking. The emerald green lines on the dream stone began to lose their vibrant glow, softening to a pale, misty green. The whispers of the echo faded back into silence. The warmth and drop of dawn cooled. The dream was ending, as all dreams must. Kael did not try to hold on to it. He simply observed the gentle withdrawal, a silent, respectful witness to the waking of the ancient dreamer. He felt a profound sense of gratitude for having been allowed to visit a sacred, quiet place. He felt as though he had lived 1,000 years in a single night. A dreamstone fell silent. The green light was gone. All that remained was his map, a breathtakingly complex and beautiful tapestry of light and texture on the black obsidian surface. It was the most intricate map he had ever created. It was a masterpiece, born of a unique and powerful connection. He stood looking at it for a long time, his body tired, but his spirit soaring. He felt the deep peace of the forest in his own bones, the patient strength of its roots in his soul. He had not just observed this dream, he had been changed by it. He felt older, calmer, and more connected to the slow, deep rhythms of the world than ever before. He knew he could not keep the map. It was too powerful, too full of life. It was not a thing to be possessed. Its purpose was to be experienced and then released. But he was not ready to wipe it away just yet. He decided to let it rest on the stone, to let its residual energy fill his workshop for a little while longer. Instead of cleaning the stone, He went to a small cot in the corner of the room. He lay down, his body heavy with a pleasant weariness. He did not sleep. He simply rested, his eyes closed. The image of the forest map burned into his mind. He could still feel its peace, its ancient, slow-breathing life, like a slow, deep hum inside him. He thought about the nature of his work. He was a cartographer, a map maker, but what he was truly making was a bridge between the waking and the dreaming, a bridge between the fast, frantic consciousness of a human and the slow, deep consciousness of a forest. He was a translator of silent languages, a chronicler of invisible worlds. A feeling of deep, quiet joy filled him. His solitary life, which some might see as small and lonely, felt immense. His small, round room was a gateway to infinite landscapes. He was a single, quiet man, but his work connected him to the sweeping soul of the entire world. After resting for a time, he rose. It was time. He approached the Dreamstone and the beautiful fading map. He looked at it one last time, memorizing every line, every texture. He took a photo of it in his mind, a perfect, permanent record he would keep in the library of his own memories. Then, with a reverence he had never felt before, he took his largest, softest velvet cloth, and he wiped the stone clean. The map dissolved, the ancient dream released back into the ether. The deep, dark, silent surface of the stone returned, as placid and patient as ever. He felt no sadness at its loss. He felt a sense of rightness. The dream had been honored, the experience had been recorded, and now the canvas was ready for whatever might come next. He looked out the window at the endless twilight clouds, his heart full of a quiet, wondering peace. The world is so much larger and stranger than he had ever known. The experience with the forest dream left a permanent mark on Kael. His senses felt sharper, his awareness deeper. When he mapped the common human dreams now, he could perceive new layers within them. In a simple dream of walking through a house, he could now feel the faint, sleepy memory of the wood in the floorboards, the quiet dream of the stone in the foundation. Everything seemed interconnected, every dream a tributary to the great, deep river of the world's consciousness. He spent many nights mapping these smaller, simpler dreams, honing his craft, practicing with his newly rediscovered rare inks. He learned to use the powdered desert silence to map not just stillness, but the hollow ache of loneliness in a dreamer's heart. He learned to use the captured ray of dawn to chart not just joy, but the faint, tender spark of a new idea. His maps became richer, more nuanced. They were less like charts and more like portraits of a soul, painted in a language of light and feeling. He worked with a quiet joy, his solitary life filled with the endless variety of the human heart. One night, as he was preparing his inks, he felt the call again. It was not the deep, green, geologic hum of the forest dream. This was a new call, with a different texture, a different color. A faint, shimmering, silvery blue line appeared on the dreamstone, a line that seemed to move and flow with a slow, liquid grace. The vibration that came from the stone was not the slow pulse of the forest, but the steady, rhythmic push and pull of a great tide. The scent that filled the air was not of moss and damp earth, but of salt and cool, clean air and immense, open space. He knew at once what it was. It was the dream of the ocean. A thrill went through him, a mixture of excitement and profound respect. The ocean's consciousness would be even vaster, even older than the forests. It was a world of darkness and pressure, of silent, drifting life, of ancient, hidden secrets. To map this would be a challenge unlike any other. He knew his current inks would be insufficient. The ocean dream was a world of its own, with its own language, its own feelings.
He went to another of his chests, this one bound in salt-bleached wood and reinforced with tarnished brass. This chest held the treasures of the sea. He opened it. Inside were bowls made of pearlescent nautilus shells. There was a fine, white sand made from the crushed bones of forgotten leviathans, used to map the patient, silent depths. There was a phial of phosphorescent light, harvested from the strange, beautiful creatures of the Midnight Zone, used to chart moments of sudden deep-sea wonder. And there was a small, tightly stoppered bottle that held a single drop of water from the very bottom of the deepest trench in the world. He laid these new tools out beside the Dreamstone, his heart beating with a quiet, steady rhythm, like a slow, deep current. He was ready to begin. He placed his hands on the stone, and the world of the ocean dream flooded his senses. It was a world of profound and immense silence, a silence that was not empty, but full of pressure, of weight. He felt the slow, majestic drift of currents, the silent, patient waiting of the creatures of the abyss. He felt the cold, a deep and ancient cold that had not felt the touch of the sun in a million years. It was not a frightening place. It was a place of deep, absolute peace. It was a world without weather, without seasons, without time as he knew it. It was a world of pure, elemental being. He felt humbled by its sheer scale, by its utter indifference to the frantic, sunlit world of the surface. He lifted his hands, his mind filled with the deep, dark, silent music of the abyss. He looked at the flowing, silvery blue line on his map, and he knew where he had to start. He had to start at the bottom, the foundation of this liquid world. He took the small bottle containing the single drop of water from the deep. Uncorking it, he let the drop fall onto the lowest part of the Dreamstone. It did not splash. It landed with a soft, heavy thud, and a circle of pure, profound darkness spread from it, a darkness deeper than the obsidian of the stone itself. This was the foundation of his new map, the anchor of the abyss. Next, he took the fine, white sand of Leviathan bones. He let it sprinkle around the edge of the dark circle, forming the soft, silty floor of the deep ocean. The lines it created were soft and blurred, conveying a sense of immense age and slow, gentle decay. You could almost feel the silent, patient rain of marine snow, the slow motion life of the seabed. The bottom of the ocean was now on his map, a place of quiet, beautiful finality. But it was not dead. It was simply resting. And now, he had to map the life that moved within its silent, dark waters. The dream was not of a single creature, but of the ocean's collective consciousness. And part of that consciousness was the slow, graceful, silent dance of the great deep-sea currents. To map these, Kael needed something that could convey flow and temperature. He used a mixture he had created long ago, a pinch of salt from a dried-up ancient sea, dissolved in a single melted snowflake. When he drew this across the stone, it created faint, semi-transparent lines that seemed to drift and swirl with a life of their own. Some lines were sharp and defined, representing the cold, fast-moving deep-sea rivers. Others were broad and diffuse, representing the slow, vast circular movements of the great ocean gyres. He drew these currents flowing above his map of the seabed, a complex and beautiful web of silent, invisible forces. The map was beginning to show the ocean's circulatory system, the slow, deep heartbeat of the planet's water. Now for the life within the dream. He did not see individual creatures, but he felt their presence, their collective, silent hopes and fears. He felt the patient, waiting hunger of an anglerfish, its lure a single point of treacherous light in the dark. He felt the slow, majestic grace of a great squid, its movements a silent, fluid poetry. To capture these feelings, he used the phial of phosphorescent light. He let a tiny amount of the glowing liquid drip onto his finger, and he used his fingertip to place single glowing points of light onto the map, suspended in the dug water between the seabed and the surface. Each point of light was a different color: a pale, ghostly blue for the patient hunters, a soft, gentle green for the shoals of small, silvery fish that moved as one being, a sudden, bright flash of pink for a startled jellyfish. The map was becoming a galaxy of silent, living lights. The ocean dream was not just about the abyss. It also held the memory of the surface, the sunlit zone. He felt the dream shift, rising from the cold, dark depths towards the distant, shimmering ceiling of the world. He felt the water growing warmer, the pressure lessening. He felt the faint, distant echo of sunlight. To map this upper layer, he used a new palette. He took a piece of mother of pearl and scraped a fine, iridescent powder from it. He scattered this powder across the top of the stone, and it created a shimmering, rainbow-colored ceiling, the boundary between the water and the air. It captured the feeling of sunlight, refracted and broken by the waves. He then added the sounds of the upper ocean, the distant crash of waves, the calls of whales. For this, he used a different kind of echo, one he had captured from inside a seashell. It created soft, circular ripples on the map, a visual representation of the ocean's voice. The map was almost complete. It showed the deep, silent seabed, the majestic, slow-moving currents, the galaxy of living lights in the abyss, and the shimmering, sunlit world of the surface. It was a map of a whole world, with its own heavens and its own underworld. But there was one last thing to add: the heart of the ocean dream. It was the feeling of connection, of being part of a simple, vast, interconnected body of water. The feeling that a drop of water that falls as rain in a mountain stream will one day find its way to the deepest part of the abyss and then rise again. To map this feeling of unity, he used his own breath. He leaned close to the stone and exhaled a long, slow, gentle breath across the entire surface of the lab. The moisture from his breath caused all the different elements, the sand, the salt, the light, the pearl dust, to soften and merge slightly at their edges, uniting them into a single, cohesive, living whole.
The dream was fading. The rhythmic pull of the tide was lessening. The silence of the abyss was receding. The sun was rising somewhere in the waking world, and the ocean was turning its attention to the new day. Kael stood back from the stone, his work complete. The map of the ocean dream was perhaps even more beautiful than the map of the forest. It was a slice of a world, a cross-section of a vast and ancient soul. It shimmered and glowed with a deep, quiet, liquid light. He felt the deep peace of the ocean within himself. His mind, which had been filled with its vastness, now felt calm and clear. He had journeyed to the bottom of the world and back, all from the safety of his quiet, round room. He let the nab rest on the stone, its beautiful, silent story filling his workshop with the scent of salt and the memory of the deep. Kael allowed himself a full day of rest after mapping the ocean dream. He did not touch the dreamstone, but let the beautiful, shimmering chart of the deep sea slowly fade on its own. Its presence filled the room with a deep, calming resonance, and he slept more soundly than he had in years. His own dreams, filled with silent, drifting currents and soft, phosphorescent light. When he awoke, the stone was clear and dark once more. He felt rested, renewed, and ready for whatever might come next. For many nights, he returned to the familiar work of mapping human dreams. He found his connection was more profound than ever. He could now perceive the echoes of the great elemental dreams within the small, personal landscapes of a human mind. In a dream of being lost, he could feel the chaotic, disorienting touch of the wind. In a dream of love, he could feel the deep,
grounding strength of the forest. In a dream of insight, he could feel the clear, cool logic of the crystal. One evening, as he sat quietly, polishing his crystalline ink bowls, the dreamstone called to him again with a new and unfamiliar voice. This was not the green pulse of the earth or the blue flow of the water. This was different. A network of fine, golden lines appeared on the stone, sharp and geometric, like a crystal lattice or a perfectly structured spider web. The vibration was high-pitched and pure, a clear, resonant, harmonic frequency. And the sensation that filled the room was not of life or of emotion, but of pure thought. It was the feeling of complex mathematics, of elegant logic, of information flowing in perfect, orderly patterns. Kael felt a thrill of intellectual curiosity. This was not the dream of a living thing. This was the dream of a crystal, of a mineral formation deep within the earth, a consciousness based not on biology, but on structure. It was the dream of pure information. Mapping a dream of pure thought would require a new approach. This was a world of logic and pattern, not of feeling and sensation. The inks of moonlight and moth dust would be useless here. He needed tools that could capture precision, structure, and clarity. He went to a tall, thin cabinet made of dark, polished wood, inlaid with geometric patterns of silver. Inside, on shelves of glass, were his intellectual inks. They were thin graphite rods that, when drawn across the stone, created lines of pure, unadorned logic. There was a small magnetic compass whose needle did not point north, but pointed towards the most elegant solution to any problem. And there was a collection of perfectly cut quartz crystals, each one tuned to a different conceptual frequency. He took a selection of these new tools and laid them out on a clean silk cloth beside the dreamstone. He felt like a mathematician preparing to solve a beautiful, complex equation.
He placed his hands on the stone, and the dream of the crystal filled his mind. It was not a flood of sensation like the forest or the ocean. It was a cool, clean, and exhilarating rush of pure pattern. He perceived the world as a symphony of numbers, a dance of geometric forms. He felt the absolute, unwavering certainty of the physical laws that bound its atoms together. He experienced the elegant, flawless repetition of its crystalline growth. There was no emotion here, no joy or sorrow. But there was a different kind of feeling, a profound and beautiful sense of order. It was the deep satisfaction of a perfect, intricate system, operating in a flawless harmony. It was the intellectual beauty of a grand cosmic design, revealed in the microscopic structure of a single stone. He lifted his hands, his mind feeling sharp, clear, and focused. He looked at the glowing, geometric web on the stone, and he knew how to begin. He needed to map the underlying axioms, the fundamental laws upon which this entire thought world was built. He took one of the graphite rods. It felt cool and smooth in his hand. He began to draw on the stone, not by copying the golden lines, but by outlining their invisible structure. He drew the axes of symmetry, the vectors of growth, the boundaries of the repeating unit cells. His lines were thin, sharp, and precise. They formed a scaffold, a wireframe of the dream's fundamental logic. The work was intensely focused, requiring a level of concentration he had rarely used before. Every line had to be perfect, every angle precise. He was not charting a feeling, he was transcribing a law of nature. The graphite scaffold grew, a complex and beautiful three-dimensional lattice on the flat surface of the stone. It did not glow or shimmer. It was a stark, elegant black and white representation of pure, unadorned truth. It was the architecture of the crystal's mind. With the logical framework in place, he could now begin to add the flow of information. He took the small, strange compass. He held it over the map, and the needle spun, not randomly,
but in a clear, decisive pattern, tracing the pathways of cause and effect through the lattice. Where the needle passed, it left a faint, silvery trail, a representation of the flow of energy and information through the crystal. He could see how a force applied to one point would propagate through the structure along predictable geometric pathways. He could see how a flaw in one part of the lattice would create elegant, complex stress patterns in another. The map was no longer static. It was a dynamic system, showing not just the structure of the crystal's thoughts, but how those thoughts moved and interacted. It was a chart of a silent internal conversation, a monologue of pure physics. Now, for the concepts themselves, the different facets of the crystal's being. It took the small cut quartz crystals and began to place them at key nodes within the graphite lattice. He placed the crystal of causality at a point where multiple pathways of influence converged, and a soft blue light pulsed from it, showing a nexus of action and reaction. He placed the crystal of symmetry at the very center of the map, and a balanced, harmonious, six-pointed star of white light bloomed from it, illuminating the perfect balance of the entire structure. He even had a place for the crystal of paradox. He placed it at a point of fracture, a flaw in the otherwise perfect lattice. From this crystal, a strange, shimmering, rainbow-colored light emerged. It represented the beautiful, unpredictable complexity that can arise even in the most orderly of systems.
The map was a stunning sight. It was a diagram of a mind made of light and logic, a silent geometric symphony. It held none of the worn, living beauty of the forest map, nor the deep, emotional resonance of the ocean map. Its beauty was of a different kind. It was the cold, clear, breathtaking beauty of mathematics, of a perfect, elegant, and intricate truth. Kael felt his own mind expand as he worked. His thoughts felt clearer, sharper. He felt as if he could see the underlying patterns in his own world, the hidden logic behind the seeming chaos. The dream of the crystal was teaching him a new way to see, a new way to understand. He was not just the cartographer of feelings anymore. He was becoming a cartographer of ideas, of principles, of the very structure of being. His craft was evolving, growing more complex and more profound with every new dream he visited. As he placed the final crystal on the map, a feeling of completeness settled over him. The dream of the crystal did not fade with the coming of the morning, as the living dreams did. Its consciousness was not tied to the cycles of day and night. It was constant, eternal. He was the one who had to break the connection. His own mind, a mind of soft, biological tissue, could not sustain this level of pure, crystalline logic for long. It was too intense, too pure. He needed the gentle imprecision of his own thoughts, the comfortable chaos of his own feelings. With a deep breath, he gently lifted his hands from the stone, and with a conscious act of will, he let the connection dissolve. The golden geometric web on the stone faded, and the high, pure, resonant frequency in the air fell silent. He was alone again in his quiet, round room. His mind felt buzzing, alive with a clear, sharp energy. He felt invigorated, but also strangely disconnected from his own familiar world. The soft light of his candle seemed imprecise. The curve of his window seemed arbitrary. He had been a guest in a world of perfect order, and his own world now seemed messy by comparison. He looked at the map he had created, the graphite lattice, the silvery pathways, the points of conceptual light. It was a perfect record of a perfect mind. He knew, as he had known with the other great maps, that he could not keep it. It was a window that was meant to be closed. He picked up the quartz crystals one by one, their life fading as he lifted them from the stone. He wiped the graphite and the silver trails away. The beautiful, logical world dissolved under his cloth, returning to the realm of the unseen. The dreamstone was once again a placid, silent black. In the cycle that followed,
Kael found his perceptions permanently sharpened. He began to notice the small hidden geometries in the world around him. The perfect hexagonal cells of a honeycomb he kept for honey tea. The elegant fractal patterns of frost spreading on his window. The crystalline structure of a single grain of salt. The world, he realized, was not so messy after all. It was simply a far more complex and layered equation than the one dreamed by the single crystal. This new understanding informed his work. When he mapped human dreams, he began to see the underlying structures of their thoughts, the logical frameworks upon which their emotions were built. He saw how a dream of anxiety was often built on a flawless but flawed logical premise. He saw how a dream of joy often emerged from a beautiful, elegant paradox in the dreamer's mind. He was no longer just mapping the what of the dream, but the why. He was charting the hidden architecture of the human psyche.
He thought he had reached the limits of his craft. He had mapped the dreams of the living and the dreams of the mineral. What else was there? What other kind of consciousness could the world possibly hold? He found his answer one blustery evening. The wind howled around his high tower, a sound he rarely heard through the thick stone walls. But tonight, he could not only hear it, but feel it. A new vibration was shaking the tower. A wild, free, and exhilarating energy that made the candle flame dance and the inks in their bowls tremble. On the dreamstone, a new pattern appeared. It was not a line or a shape, but a swirling, chaotic, and beautiful vortex of pure white light. It was constantly moving, constantly changing, a miniature cyclone of pure energy. And the feeling that came from it was one of utter, boundless, untamable freedom. It was the dream of the wind. Kael stared at the swirling vortex on the stone, a sense of awe and a little bit of fear touching his heart. The dreams of the forest, the ocean, and the crystal had been vast and powerful, but they had been contained, governed by their own internal laws. The dream of the wind felt like it had no laws at all. It was pure, unadulterated, joyful chaos. How could one map chaos? How could one draw a chart of something that had no fixed form, no repeating pattern, no discernible structure? This was not a landscape or an equation. It was a force, a feeling, a dance. He looked at his collection of inks and tools. None of them seemed right. Powdered moonlight would be blown away. Liquid twilight would be scattered. He needed a new medium, something as fluid and free as the dream itself. He looked around his workshop, and his eyes fell on the candle. The flame was dancing, swaying, constantly changing, and he looked at his own breath, misting on the cool glass of the window, and he had an idea. He would not use ink. He would use fire and air. He approached the dreamstone. The swirling vortex of white light was mesmerizing, its patterns complex and ever-shifting. He felt its wild energy, its desire to be everywhere at once, to touch everything, to be bound by nothing. He took the candle from its holder. It was a risk. The heat could damage the stone, but he felt this was the only way. He held the candle over the stone, letting the heat from the flame interact with the energy of the dream. Where the heat was most intense, the white vortex on the stone seemed to glow brighter, to spin faster. He began to move the candle in a slow, circular dance, his own hand mimicking the swirling motion of the wind. He was not drawing. He was conducting. He was using the heat of the flame to guide and shape the energy on the stone, creating temporary patterns of intensity. The map of heat and light was beautiful, but it was only half of the story. The wind was not just energy, it was movement. It was the air itself. He needed to map its touch, its caress, its powerful, invisible presence. He put the candle down and leaned over the stone. He began to use his own breath, as he had done with the ocean map, but in a completely different way.
He did not breathe a gentle, unifying mist. He blew sharp, focused gusts of air onto the stone surface. Where his breath struck the vortex of light, the light would scatter, creating beautiful, feather-like patterns. He used long, slow breaths to represent the great, high-altitude jet streams. He used short, sharp puffs to represent the chaotic, playful eddies that dance around street corners. His breath and the candle flame became his tools. He danced around the stone, a silent, focused dervish, painting with heat and air, sculpting with energy and movement. He was performing a duet with the dream of the wind.
The dream was pure sensation. There were no thoughts, no memories, only the feeling of constant, joyful motion. He felt the wind's journey across the world. He felt it skimming the surface of the ocean, tasting the salt. He felt it rushing over a sun-baked desert, picking up the heat and the sand. He felt it whispering through the high, cold peaks of mountains. He felt it rustling the leaves of the forest, carrying the scent of pine. He realized that the wind was the world's messenger. It was the thing that connected everything. It carried the pollen from one flower to another, the seeds from one forest to another. It carried the scent of the sea to the heart of the land. It carried the dust of the mountains to the bottom of the ocean. It was the great connector, the tireless traveler, the breath of the planet itself. And its dream was a dream of boundless, joyful, and chaotic unity. As he worked, his workshop, usually a place of profound stillness, was filled with a wild, dancing energy. The papers on his desk rustled. The herbs hanging from the ceiling swayed. The very air seemed to vibrate with the power of the dream he was channeling. He felt his own spirit soar. He felt untethered, free. The stone tower that was his home felt less like a sanctuary and more like a cage. He felt a sudden, powerful urge to throw open the window and let the real wind rush in, to feel it on his own skin. But he restrained himself. His work was here, on stone. His job was to be the anchor, the pointed stillness around which the chaos could dance. He was the eye of the storm. He focused his mind, grounding himself, his feet solid on the floor, while his spirit flew with the wind across the face of the sleeping world. Unlike the other dreams, the dream of the wind did not seem to have a beginning or an end. It was a constant, eternal state of being. It did not wake or sleep. It simply was. The swirling vortex on his stone showed no signs of fading. Kael knew he could not sustain this dance forever. His own body was growing tired. His breath was becoming ragged. He had to be the one to end the connection. He had to choose to step out of the storm. With one last, great, sweeping motion of the candle, and one last, long, powerful exhalation of breath, he finished his performance. He placed the candle back in its holder. He stood for a moment, breathing heavily, his heart pounding in his chest. He had touched a primal force, a wild and beautiful power, and eased trembling with the after effects. He looked at the dreamstone. His map, if it could be called that, was a swirling, dynamic, beautiful chaos of light and shadow, of hot and cold, of stillness and motion. It was not a chart to be read, but a piece of music to be felt, a dance to be witnessed. It was his most abstract, most energetic, and perhaps his most honest work. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had successfully mapped the 4 great elemental dreams of his world: the earth dream of the forest, the water dream of the ocean, the crystal dream of the mineral mind, and now, the air dream of the wind. He felt as if he had completed a great and sacred cycle. He was tired, a deep, bone-deep weariness that was both physical and spiritual. He knew he would not be mapping any more dreams this night. He needed to rest, to let the wild energy of the wind drain away, to find his own quiet center again. He did not wipe the stone clean. He let the vortex of light continue its silent, mesmerizing dance. He went to his chair by the window and sat down, wrapping a soft woolen blanket around his shoulders. He watched the swirling map, its chaotic pattern slowly calming his own racing heart, its constant motion becoming a hypnotic, soothing rhythm. He thought about the 4 dreams he had mapped. Earth, water, fire, for the crystal's logical light was a kind of cold fire, and air. They were the 4 great pillars of the waking world, and he had discovered that each of them had its own rich, complex, and beautiful inner life, its own silent, secret dream. He felt a profound sense of connection to his world, a feeling of being a small but integral part of a great, dreaming, conscious whole. He, the quiet cartographer, had become the keeper of the planet's secret soul. And as he finally drifted off to sleep in his chair, his own small human dream was of a wild, joyful, and liberating flight on the back of the wind. After the 4 great elemental mappings, Kael's work entered a new phase of peace and subtlety. The Dreamstone was quiet for many nights, no vast, ancient consciousness calling to him. He was content with this. It gave him time to rest, to contemplate, and to integrate the profound experiences he had been through. He spent his evenings reading from his small collection of books, tending to his herbs, and simply watching the slow, silent dance of the silver lights on his ceiling. His own dreams were rich and vivid, filled with deep forests, silent oceans, crystalline caves, and soaring windy skies. He awoke each morning feeling refreshed and inspired, his understanding of the dream world deepened not by his work, but by his own personal journeys. When he did return to the stone, he found his connection to human dreams was more profound than ever. He could now perceive the echoes of the great elemental dreams within the small, personal landscapes of the human mind. One night, a new and very different kind of dream appeared on the stone. It did not appear as a line of light or a swirling vortex. Instead, the surface of the obsidian stone seemed to lose its solidity, becoming a dark, transparent window. And through the window, he saw a place. It was a city. A silent, beautiful, and empty city. The architecture was strange and elegant, with tall, slender spires that seemed to be made of spun moonlight, and gracefully arching bridges that crossed canals of still black water. The light came from glowing, pearl-like lamps that hung in the air, casting a soft, gentle luminescence over everything. There were no people, no movement, no sound. It was a city of ghosts, a memory of a place. Kael felt a sense of gentle, poignant melancholy emanating from the dream. It was not a sad feeling, but a deeply nostalgic one. It was the dream of a place that had once been loved and was now lost. He knew at once that he could not map this dream with his usual inks of light and feeling. This was a dream of memory, of form, of things that had once been solid and real. This required a different kind of cartography, more akin to the work of a waking world architect or historian. He went to a set of long, shallow drawers built into the curved wall of his workshop. He slid one open. Inside, nestled in soft gray felt, were tools for drawing structure. There were styluses of silver and gold, which could draw fine, precise lines of light on the stone. There was a set of compasses and rulers made from a dark, smooth, unidentifiable wood. And there was a small silk pouch filled with powdered star sapphires, which, when used, could create a sense of three-dimensional depth on the flat surface of the stone. He was not just a cartographer of emotion and idea anymore. Tonight, he would have to be a cartographer of memory. He did not place his hands on the stone to enter the dream. Instead, he simply looked through the window, his eyes tracing the lines of the silent, moonlit city. He took a silver stylus in his hand. It felt cool and light. He began to draw, his hand moving with a new kind of precision. He started with the spires, the most prominent features of the city. He drew their tall, slender forms, their delicate, lace-like details. The silver stylus left a trail of soft, white light on the obsidian, a perfect, ghostly replica of the structures in the dream. He drew the graceful arches of the bridges, the smooth, stone banks of the canals. The work was slow and meticulous. He was not capturing a feeling, but a form. He was transcribing the ghost of a city onto his stone. It was a work of profound and focused observation, a meditation on the beauty of things that are no longer there. As he drew the physical structures, he began to feel the emotional resonance of the place. The city was empty, but it was not devoid of feeling. Every silent street corner, every empty balcony, every still canal held an echo of the life that had once filled it. He could feel the faint, residual warmth of 1,000 conversations, the ghostly imprint of laughter on the stone bridges, the quiet, lingering sadness of farewells on the doorsteps. These were the city's ghosts, the invisible emotional architecture that lay overlaid on the physical one. He had to map these as well. He put down the silver stylus and took up the golden one. With the golden stylus, he began to trace the pathways of memory. He drew faint, warm, golden lines where crowds had once walked, soft, glowing circles where people had once gathered to talk and laugh. The map was becoming a beautiful, layered thing. The stark, white, silver lines of the physical city, and the warm, soft, golden lines of its emotional history. The two were intertwined, inseparable. A form of the city had been shaped by the lives lived within it, and the memories were anchored to the physical places where they had happened. Now he needed to add a sense of depth, of atmosphere. He took the pouch of powdered star sapphire. He blew a gentle breath of the deep blue dust across the map. The powder settled, not evenly, but clinging to the lines he had drawn, giving them a sense of solidity and dimension. The canals seemed to sink into the stone. Its spires seemed to rise towards him. Powder also gave the map the quality of twilight, the feeling of being in a place between day and night, between the real and the remembered. The silent city on his stone now looked less like a drawing and more like a diorama. As he worked, a story began to form in his mind, a narrative pieced together from the golden lines of memory. It was the story of a city built by people who loved beauty and peace, a city of artists, poets, and musicians, a city where the pace of life was slow and gentle, like the still water in its canals. He saw flashes of the life they had lived, festivals of light, where glowing lanterns were floated down the black water, concerts of silent music, played on instruments that created feelings instead of sounds, quiet afternoons spent in libraries filled with books of dreams. He also felt the story at the city's end. It was not a violent end. There was no fire, no war. There was just a slow, gentle fading. A great sadness had settled over the people, and one by one they had simply left. They had sailed away from their beautiful city, seeking a new world, leaving their home to become a perfect, beautiful memory. Kael felt a deep empathy for the dreamer of this dream. The dream was not their own memory. They had never lived in the city. They were a descendant of the people who had left, and this dream was an inherited ghost, a piece of ancestral memory that haunted their sleep. It was a dream of a home they had never known, a beautiful sadness they carried in their blood. He poured all of his empathy, all of his understanding into the final touches of his map. He added a single soft silver tear, falling from a phantom moon into one of the canals, a symbol of the dreamer's own quiet sorrow for this lost paradise. The map was complete. It was a perfect portrait of a beautiful, poignant, and noble sadness. It was a testament to the fact that some things are made more beautiful by the fact that they are lost. The dream window began to fade. The image of the city grew faint, its moonlit spires dissolving back into the darkness of the obsidian stone. The dreamer was waking, carrying the ghost of their ancestor's city back into the light of their own day. Kael was left with his map, a glowing, multi-layered chart of a lost world. He felt a gentle melancholy in his own heart, a shared echo of the dream's poignant beauty. He had been a tourist in a city of memories, and he felt privileged to have walked its silent, beautiful streets. He knew that this map, like the others, was temporary, but he did not have the heart to wipe it away immediately. It felt too much like a second forgetting. He decided to let it remain, to honor the memory of the city for a little while longer. He did not sleep that night. He sat in his chair, watching the beautiful sad city on his dreamstone. He felt like a watchman, a guardian of a place that existed now only in a dream and on the surface of his magical stone. He thought about the nature of memory, how it can be a burden and a treasure, a ghost and a guide. He thought about all the lost cities, the forgotten stories, the faded dreams of the world. He felt a new sense of purpose in his work. He was not just a cartographer. He was a keeper of lost things. He was a rememberer. As the first hint of morning touched the clouds outside his window, he finally stood up. He went to the stone. He looked at the city one last time, and with a silent, respectful nod, he wiped it clean. The city of memory vanished, but he knew it would never be truly gone, because now he remembered it too. Kael's journey into the city of memory opened a new dimension in his work. He became attuned to the dreams of history, the echoes of the past that still resonated in the sleeping minds of the present. He found that many dreams, which on the surface seemed personal, were in fact rooted in these deeper, inherited landscapes. A dream of being lost in a tangled forest might be an echo of an ancestor's perilous journey. A dream of a warm, safe kitchen might be a fragment of a collective memory of hearth and home from a time of great hardship. He learned to look beneath the surface of the dream, to find the ancient roots that fed the modern leaves. His maps became archaeological digs of the soul. He would first map the surface dream, the personal story, and then he would chart the deeper, older structures that lay beneath it, showing how the past was always present, a silent, invisible architecture shaping the dreamer's inner world. One night, the dreamstone presented him with a puzzle. It showed him not one dream, but two, existing in the same space at the same time. On the left side of the stone, a cool blue light emanated, the landscape of the dream filled with calm, quiet, and logical thought. On the right side, a warm red light pulsed, the landscape of a dream filled with passionate emotion, creativity, and chaos. The two dreams were touching, their borders swirling and indistinct, bleeding into one another. It was as if two completely different dreamers were somehow sharing a single psychic space. Kael had never seen anything like it. He felt the call of both dreams, the cool, intellectual curiosity of the blue dream, and the warm, empathetic pull of the red dream. He could not choose one. He had to map them both. And more importantly, he had to map the border between them, the strange and wonderful space where logic and passion met. He began on the blue side, the dream of logic. It was a familiar landscape, similar to the dream of the crystal. It was a world of clean, geometric shapes, of elegant, clockwork mechanisms, of clear, cool light. He used his graphite styluses and his conceptual crystals to map its perfect, orderly structure. It was a dream of a mind that found peace and beauty in order, in reason. Then he moved to the red side, the dream of passion. This world was a swirling vortex of color and sound, a chaotic and beautiful storm of pure feeling. It was a landscape of erupting volcanoes of creativity, of raging rivers of love, of deep, dark forests of sorrow. He used his inks of moonlight and twilight, and his tools of fire and air to capture its wild, untamed energy.
It was the dream of a mind that found meaning in feeling, in art, in the beautiful, messy experience of being alive. Now for the most difficult part, the border. This was the space where the two dreams met, and it was a landscape unlike any he had ever seen. The cool, blue, geometric shapes of the logical dream were being softened and warped by the hot, red, chaotic energies of the passionate dream, and the swirling emotional colors of the passionate dream were being channeled and structured by the cool, clear lines of the logical dream. It was a place of breathtaking, dynamic creation. It was where a logical idea would suddenly burst into a beautiful, artistic form. It was where a raw, powerful emotion would find a clear, elegant structure to express itself. It was the birthplace of poetry, of music, of elegant scientific theories. To map this borderland, he had to use all of his tools at once. He drew a line of pure logic with his graphite stylus, and then used his own breath to soften and blur it with a cloud of passionate red. As he mapped this strange and beautiful borderland, he realized what he was seeing. This was not the dream of two different people. This was the dream of one person, a single individual whose mind was a house divided, a constant, dynamic, and creative conversation between their logical self and their passionate self. The dreamer was likely an artist who is also a scientist, or a musician who is also a mathematician. They were someone who lived in this beautiful, challenging space between two worlds, and their dreams were a reflection of their constant internal work of integrating these two powerful parts of themselves. Kael felt a profound admiration for this dreamer. Their inner world was a place of constant creative tension, a beautiful, chaotic, and wonderfully productive workshop. His map was not a chart of a conflict, but of a collaboration.
He named the map the alchemical marriage, for it was a true union of opposites, creating something new and precious. The finished map was his most complex and balanced work yet. It showed the cool, blue world of reason and the hot, red world of passion, and the beautiful, purple, creative borderland where they met and danced. It was a map that hummed with a dynamic, creative energy. It was not peaceful in the way the other maps had been. It was alive with the hum of a mind hard at work, a soul in the process of becoming. It was the beauty of a work in progress. He felt that this map was a portrait of the human condition itself, the constant dance between our heads and our hearts, our reason and our passion. And he saw that the goal was not for one to conquer the other, but for them to learn to live together, to create together in the beautiful, messy space in between. The dream of the alchemical marriage stayed with Kael for a long time. It taught him to look for the hidden conversations within every dream, the secret dialogues between the different parts of a dreamer's soul. His workshop became a place of profound psychological insight. He began to feel, however, that his journeys were taking a toll. Channeling these vast and powerful dreams, whether they were of ancient elements or complex human minds, was exhausting work. He found himself needing more and more time to rest, to recover his own spiritual energy. He began to wonder about his own inner world. He had spent his entire life looking out, mapping the dreams of others. He had never once turned his gaze inward to map the landscape of his own soul. He had no idea what he would find there. The thought was both intriguing and a little frightening. One evening, he decided he would not seek out the dream of another. He would try to map his own. He prepared the dreamstone, laying out all of his tools, for he did not know what he would need. He lit his candle, its soft, steady light feeling more like a companion than ever before. He sat before the stone,
but he did not place his hands upon it. How did one connect to one's own dream? He could not be both the cartographer and the landscape. Or could he? He decided to try a different approach. He took a small silver mirror from one of his drawers. He placed it in the center of the dreamstone. He leaned over it, looking at his own reflection. He looked into his own eyes, and he let his mind grow quiet, still and receptive. He tried to look through his reflection into the world that lay behind his own eyes. At first, nothing happened. He simply saw his own familiar face, the faint lines of concentration around his eyes, the soft light of the candle reflected in his pupils. He felt a moment of disappointment. Perhaps it was not possible. Perhaps the cartographer's own world was the one place he could never chart. But he persisted. He kept his gaze steady, his mind open. He breathed slowly and deeply. And then something began to change. His reflection in the mirror began to blur, to soften. The features of his face dissolved, and the silver surface of the mirror became a misty gray window. A landscape began to appear. It was a quiet twilight land, a place of soft hills and gentle winding paths. In the center of the landscape, there was a tall, lonely, gray stone tower. His tower, his home. He was looking at the landscape of his own heart.
He felt a strange mix of disappointment and relief. His inner world was not a place of raging volcanoes or crystalline caves. It was just this, a quiet, lonely, peaceful place. But as he looked closer, he began to see the details. The paths that wound through the hills were not made of dirt. They were paved with smooth, dark obsidian stones, the same material as his dreamstone. And the hills were not covered in grass, but in a soft, gray, velvet-like moss that seemed to absorb all sound. And then he saw the lights. Floating all through the twilight landscape were small, soft, shimmering spheres of light of every color. Some were the blue-white of a flying dream. Some were the emerald green of the forest dream. They were all the dreams he had ever mapped, floating like gentle, captive stars in the quiet landscape of his own soul. He realized that his inner world was a museum, a gallery, an archive of all the beauty he had witnessed. He had not lost those maps when he wiped them from the stone. He had absorbed them. He had made them a part of himself. His soul was a quiet, gentle landscape that existed to provide a home for the dreams of others. A profound sense of peace settled over him. His life was not small or empty. It was full. It was overflowing with the joy, the sadness, the wisdom, and the beauty of 1,000 different souls. He reached for his tools. He knew now how to map this place. He took his softest cloths, his most gentle inks. He began to draw the quiet, rolling hills of his own heart. He drew the lonely, gray stone tower that was his anchor, his center. And then, one by one, he began to paint the floating, shimmering lights of the captured dreams. This was the easiest, most natural mapping he had ever done. His hands moved with an effortless grace, a deep, intuitive knowledge of the terrain. He knew the exact shade of gold to use for the dream of a new love. He knew the precise texture of the moth dust needed to capture the peaceful stillness of a sleeping child's mind. He was not just copying a landscape. He was painting a self-portrait. But it was a self-portrait made of the lives of others. It was a beautiful paradox. He was a solitary man, yet his soul was a bustling city of ghosts and dreams. He was a still point, but his inner world was a vast and varied landscape. A map that emerged on the stone was the most beautiful thing he had ever created. It was a map
of his own quiet, profound, and deeply fulfilling life. As he drew the last shimmering light, the image in the mirror faded, and his own reflection returned. He looked tired, but his eyes were shining with a new light, a light of self-knowledge and acceptance. He finally understood himself. He was the keeper, the rememberer, the cartographer, and that was all he needed to be. He looked at the map of his own soul on the Dreamstone. It was a quiet, gentle, and beautiful place, a place he was happy to call home. For the first time, he did not feel the need to wipe the stone clean. This map he would keep. This map was his own. He left the map glowing on the stone and went to his cot. He lay down, and for the first time in his life, he fell asleep with a perfect, untroubled, and dreamless sleep. For his dreams were already out in the open, glowing for him in the soft, quiet light of his workshop.
Kael awoke feeling a new sense of wholeness. The barrier between his inner and outer worlds had dissolved. He was at peace with his solitary life, no longer questioning its purpose, no longer feeling the faint, lingering pull of a world he did not know. His world was here, in this room, and it was as vast and as beautiful as the cosmos itself. The map of his own soul remained on the Dreamstone, a constant, gentle reminder of who he was. It did not interfere with his work. When a new dream called to him, it would simply form over the top of his own map, a temporary, translucent layer. And he found that this new arrangement made his work even richer. He could now see how the dreams of others resonated with the captured dreams he already held within himself. His workshop was no longer just a place of work. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of dreams, a garden of the soul, and he was its gentle, loving gardener. One evening, something new and strange happened. A dream appeared on the stone that was not a landscape, not an equation, not a memory, and not a feeling. It was a story. He saw, as if watching a silent play, a little wooden boat being tossed on a stormy sea. He saw a lonely lighthouse keeper, struggling to keep his light burning against a powerful wind. He saw a great, gentle whale rising from the depths to shield the lighthouse from a rogue wave. He saw the storm pass, and the lighthouse keeper and the whale sharing a moment of quiet, mutual respect in the calm morning light. It was a complete narrative, with characters, a plot, a conflict, and a resolution. Kael was mesmerized. He had never mapped the story before. How did one chart a narrative? He realized he needed to map the flow of the story itself, the rising and falling action, the emotional arc of the characters. He took out a new tool, one he had never used. It was a long, thin, flexible silver chain. He laid the chain on the map in a winding, looping path, representing the timeline of the story. He then began to attach small, symbolic charms to the chain at different points. He attached a small, dark storm cloud charm at the beginning. He attached a tiny, glowing, golden lamp charm to represent the lighthouse keeper's struggle. He attached a beautiful, carved mother-of-pearl whale charm to represent the whale's heroic appearance. And he attached a small, bright silver sun charm at the very end. He then used his colored inks to paint the emotional atmosphere around the chain. A dark, chaotic wash of color for the storm, a warm, hopeful glow round the lighthouse keeper. The finished map was a new kind of creation. It was a visual representation of a story, a chart of a narrative journey. It was beautiful and dynamic, and it told the story of the lighthouse keeper and the whale, with a clarity and an emotional resonance that words alone could not achieve. Kael was thrilled. He had discovered a new form of cartography, a new language for translating the world of dreams. He felt like an explorer who had just discovered a new continent. For many nights after, he sought out these story dreams. He mapped the tale of a young girl who befriended a dragon,
He charted the adventure of a lost boy who was guided home by a constellation that came to life. He recorded the myth of a city that slept for 1,000 years and was awoken by a single perfect song.
His workshop became a library of stories, his dreamstone a stage for 1,000 silent plays. He was no longer just a cartographer or a keeper. He was a storyteller in his own quiet, unique way. He was preserving the narratives that the sleeping world told itself each night. He noticed that these story dreams had a different quality from the others. They felt more purposeful, more crafted. They were not just the random firings of a sleeping mind. They felt like gifts, like lessons, like myths being born in the deep collective consciousness of the world. He began to feel that his work was more important than ever. He was not just observing. He was helping to preserve the wisdom of the world, the moral fables, the stories of hope and courage that humanity needed to remember. One night, as he was finishing a particularly beautiful map by the story about a man who learned to talk to the birds, he noticed a new light on the stone. It was not part of the dream he was mapping. It was a single, small, brilliant, white point of light, glowing at the very edge of his own soul map, which still lay as the permanent base layer on the stone. He touched the point of light with his finger. It was intensely warm, and a feeling of immense, profound, and unconditional love flooded his being. It was a feeling more powerful than any he had ever experienced. And a voice spoke in his mind. It was not a voice of words, but of pure feeling, of pure light. And it said, "Thank you, cartographer. You have listened well." Kael fell to his knees, his hand still on the stone, tears streaming down his face. They were tears of pure, overwhelming joy. He did not know who the voice belonged to. It felt like the voice of the universe itself, the voice of the great dreamer, the source of all the dreams he had ever mapped. He felt a sense of completion, of having been seen and acknowledged by the very source of his art, his life, his purpose. The little white point of light pulsed with a gentle, loving rhythm, and he felt all the weariness, all the spiritual exhaustion of his long years of work simply melt away. He was being healed, renewed, refilled. He stayed there for a long time, his hand on the light, basking in its incredible warmth and love. He felt no need to map this experience. It was not a dream to be recorded. It was a truth to be lived. When the light finally faded, Kael stood up, feeling like a new person. He was still the same quiet man in the same quiet room, but he felt a new lightness in his soul, a new, unshakable sense of peace and purpose. He had been given a great gift, a moment of pure grace. He looked at his own map on the stone. The point where the white light had been was now marked by a single, tiny, perfect white star, a permanent mark of the moment he had touched the heart of the universe and it had touched him back. His work now felt different. It was no longer a solitary craft. He felt as if he were working in partnership with the great dreamer, a humble assistant in the grand and beautiful project of dreaming the world into being. He continued his work for many more years, his touch more gentle, his understanding more profound than ever. His collection of dream maps, the ones he kept now only in the library of his own mind, was a treasure trove of the world's secret beauty. He charted the dreams of creatures he had never known existed. The slow, patient, photosynthetic dreams of lichens, the short, frantic, geometric dreams of honeybees, the deep, communal, earth dreams of a colony of ants. He learned that everything dreamed in its own way. Every living thing, every stone, every gust of wind was part of the great universal chorus of dreamers. He was the only one who could hear the music. He was the only one who could see the patterns. And he faithfully, lovingly, and peacefully recorded it all. One evening, he felt a new change. His own body was growing old. His movements were slower. His hands, once so steady, now trembled slightly. He knew, with the same calm certainty with which he knew the nature of dreams, that his own time in the waking world was drawing to a close. He felt no fear, no sadness. His life had been full and beautiful. He had journeyed farther than any explorer, seen more wonders than any king. He was ready for the next great journey. He went to the Dreamstone for what he knew would be the last time. He did not prepare his inks or his tools. He had one last map to make, and it would require a different kind of craft. He placed his hands on the stone. He did not seek out the dream of another. He reached into his own mind, into the library of all the maps he had ever made, and he began to project them, one by one, onto the surface of the stone. First, the simple, joyful flight of the first dreamer. Then, the vast, ancient green peace of the forest. Then, the deep, dark, silent mystery of the ocean. The cool, clear, logical beauty of the crystal. The wild, free, chaotic dance of the wind. The sad, poignant, moonlit streets of the city of memory. The beautiful, dynamic, creative storm of the alchemical marriage. The quiet, gentle, star-filled landscape of his own soul. All of his life's work, all of the beauty he had ever witnessed, appeared on the stone at once, a single, vast, complex, and breathtakingly beautiful composite map. The map was a symphony of light and color, of feeling and thought, of memory and potential. It was the dream of his own life, a life spent in service to the dreams of the world. He poured all of his love, all of his gratitude, all of his wisdom into this final creation. It was his masterpiece, his final gift to the world, a map of the universe's dreaming soul as seen through the eyes of one quiet, humble man. He lifted his hands from the stone. The map remained, glowing with a bright, steady, and powerful light. It was no longer ephemeral. It was permanent. It had been infused with the last of his own life force. It would not fade.
He was very tired now. He went to his cot and lay down. He looked at his final beautiful map, glowing on the Dreamstone. It was a worthy legacy. He felt a sense of profound and utter peace. He closed his eyes and he let go. He felt his own consciousness, his own small, quiet dream, detached from his body. But he did not fade into nothingness. He felt himself being drawn towards the stone, towards the beautiful map he had created. He floated through the quiet air of his workshop, a spirit of light, and he entered the map. He found himself standing on a gentle, rolling hill, under a twilight sky filled with the shimmering lights of 1,000 different dreams. The air was cool and smelled of lavender and night air. His tower was gone. The landscape stretched away in every direction, an endless, beautiful world woven from all the dreams he had ever known. He could walk through the whisper-quiet aisles of the forest. He could swim in the silent, phosphorescent currents of the deep ocean. He could explore the cool, logical, crystalline caves. He could soar on the wild, free, and joyful winds. He could walk the silent, moonlit streets of the city of memory. He was no longer the cartographer of the dream world. He was a citizen of it. He was not alone. The dreamers he had visited, the souls he had touched, were there in a sense. The joy of the flying dreamer was a warm breeze on his cheek. The strength of the forest was the solid ground beneath his feet. The wisdom of the ocean was the deep, quiet peace in his heart. He had become one with his work,
He had dissolved into the beauty he had spent his life witnessing. It was not an end, it was a transformation, a homecoming. He began to walk down one of the quiet, obsidian paths with no destination in mind, simply exploring the beautiful, peaceful, and endless world he had created. Back in the quiet, round room at the top of the lonely gray stone tower, the physical body of Kael, the cartographer, lay still and at peace on his cot. On the dreamstone, the final, perfect map glowed with a gentle, eternal light. The room remained silent and untouched for 1,000 years. The tower became a legend, a myth whispered by the wind, a story told by old women to sleepy children. The story of the Cartographer of Silent Dreams. They said that if you listened closely on a quiet night, you could still hear the faint, happy hum of a mind at peace with its work. And they said that sometimes a new dream would appear in the sleeping world, a dream of a quiet, gentle man with kind eyes, walking through a beautiful landscape of forests and oceans and cities of light. A man who would smile and nod at the dreamer, and then continue on his peaceful, endless journey. They said that to have this dream was a great blessing. It meant your own dreams were being watched over, kept safe, and remembered by the cartographer himself. It was a sign that your own small story had become a part of his great, beautiful, and never-ending map.
The final map on the Dreamstone did not remain static. It was a living thing, a reflection of the ever-changing dreamscape of the world. As new dreams were dreamed, new landscapes would gently, subtly emerge on the map. As old dreams were forgotten, their lights would softly, peacefully fade. The map was the new heart of the dreaming world, a central repository, a silent, beautiful library of the world's soul. And Kael, now a part of that map, was its eternal, gentle, and loving librarian. He would greet the new dreams as they arrived, finding them a place in the vast, beautiful landscape. He would bid a quiet, respectful farewell to the old dreams as they departed. His work was not over. It had simply changed. He learned the deep, secret connections between all things. He saw how a single falling leaf in the forest dream could cause a tiny, beautiful ripple in the ocean dream. He saw how a new, logical idea in the crystal dream could build a new, beautiful, moonlit spire in the city of memory. Everything was connected. Everything was a conversation. The universe was a single, vast, and infinitely complex dream, dreaming itself into being. And he was in the privileged position of being able to read its poetry, to understand its language. His existence was one of pure, joyful, and peaceful observation. He had no needs, no desires, no fears. He was a being of pure consciousness, a gentle, curious, and loving witness to the endless, unfolding beauty of the dream. Sometimes a dreamer in the waking world would have a particularly difficult dream, a nightmare of fear or sorrow. Kael would feel it as a discordant note in the great symphony, a jagged, dark crack in the beautiful map. He would travel to that dark place in his world of dreams. He would not fight the darkness. He would not try to banish the fear. He would simply bring his own quiet, peaceful presence to that place. He would sit down and he would listen. He would listen to the fear. He would listen to the sorrow. And his gentle, loving, non-judgmental attention was a kind of light, a soft, healing balm. And often that was enough. The darkness, having been heard and acknowledged, would slowly lose its power. The jagged crack on the map would soften, at its edges heal over. The dreamer in the waking world would feel their fear recede, their sorrow lessen, replaced by a sense of calm and peace they could not explain.
They would never know that a quiet, gentle cartographer, in a world woven from dreams, had sat with them in their darkest hour and had offered them the simple, powerful gift of his quiet, compassionate company. This, he found, was his new work. Not just to map, but to heal. To be a gentle, silent guardian of the sleeping souls of the world.
And so his legend grew. He became more than just the cartographer. He was known in the deep, silent language of the dreaming world as the healer of nightmares, the keeper of the peaceful sleep. The ancient forest would send him whispers of thanks on the wind. The deep ocean would send him silent, phosphorescent pulses of gratitude from its abyss. The crystals deep in the earth would resonate with a clear, pure note of respect for his work. He was loved by the dreaming world he served, and he loved it in return. He had no sense of the passing of time. 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years, they were all the same to him. His existence was a single, long, beautiful, and peaceful present moment. He walked his endless, beautiful lands. He tended his garden of dreams. He listened. He remembered. He healed. He was a myth, a legend, a ghost, a dream. He was the quiet, steady, and loving heart of the sleeping world. And if you, as you drift off to sleep tonight, should find yourself in a strange and beautiful landscape, a forest that whispers your name, an ocean that sings a silent, deep song, a city of moonlit spires, do not be afraid. You are simply a welcome guest in the world of the cartographer. You are walking on one of his beautiful, ancient maps. And if you should see a quiet, gentle man with kind eyes walking a little way ahead of you on an obsidian path, do not be startled. He is simply on his way to tend to a new dream, to heal a forgotten sorrow, to listen to a new story. He may turn and smile at you, the smile of pure, peaceful, and welcoming recognition. And you will feel a sense of calm and safety wash over you, a feeling of being known and seen and loved, a feeling of being home. For his world is your world. His dream is your dream, and his story, the story of the quiet man who mapped the soul of the world, is now and forever will be a small and beautiful part of your own.